So I started looking into that. So many facial muscles are moving at one time when you're laughing that you're not only making yourself feel better, you're making yourself look better. You're actually moving back to anti-aging.
Welcome to the Untied podcast. Today we are talking to Joan and Jane, the therapy twins. Now, this is really cool because they are biological and identical twins that have released a book together. They've been on multiple podcasts, and they have degrees in therapy at like psychiatry. And they came on today to share some of their thoughts on trauma and laughter and how laughter can heal. And I felt that this was the perfect fit for the Untied podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let's jump right into the interview. Personally, like I used to not like the only time I'd ever been to Florida was like Orlando until this year I was in Naples. And Naples made me really like Florida.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
But I had so what are your guys? Do you like the warmer weather? Do you like the experiencing all four seasons?
Sure, I like four seasons, but really it's beautiful. I'd have to see it on TV now because I'm forced in Florida. It is really cheaper here. It's cheaper, it's friendlier. Jane, we just met a model today who gave us a few gifts, like a tractor thing on wheels for your groceries and a gigantic fan. It's incredible.
She apparently didn't need it.
Yeah.
But what we don't like in Florida is the 4 months, and it's coming to an end of that hurricane season because it's so hot, it's gross. You're indoors mostly. But the rest, we're 62 now, and I don't ever have to go in the snow. I don't have to say, "Oh, isn't that beautiful?"
I don't have to see a red leaf.
We've seen it. We made snow angels as kids. We've done it.
And my sense of smell is like a dog, and it's very uncomfortable. Like I can't go to certain places in the world because it would get ugly. I smell too much.
And the roads,
I don't smell too much, but I smell.
The roads.
Yeah.
Let him
nice
start
too.
the fucking podcast.
But wait, I call you if we want to. Is it Jackson?
No, you guys can filibuster. I love this.
Oh,
Jack from a movie.
Oh, we'll call you Jack.
It was from a series, and even my ex-husband got really mad. He's like, "Where's this Jack coming from?" So every morning we go, "Good morning, Jack," and it's because the president at the time had a Louisville, Kentucky accent.
Or she was from Tennessee or Kentucky. And you could hardly tell as she was speaking, except when she said the guy's name, Jack. It was like, Jack. And so we can't stop saying it. We love it.
Which series is that?
24 with Kiefer Sutherland.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, Jack.
I love that show. My parents watched it, when I was younger, and so I would sit through it. And I recently, when they did the reboot or whatever with the new guy, we went through and we binged the whole series and then Redemption and all that. So yeah, no, I love that show.
I love now Better Call Saul.
Oh, okay. So I'm still working on Breaking Bad, which is hard because no one wants to talk about Breaking Bad anymore because it's been off the air for so long.
I know.
So I feel like I'm I did that with a couple of them, like Prison Break, and a couple that I was just like, okay, everyone that I was like, hey, have you seen this? They're like, you mean the show that got off the air 8 years ago? Yeah, I've seen it. Like,
was discoing around.
Yeah.
Well, I know some people are going to rewatch Breaking Bad after they're done with Better Call Saul.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I guess, so this is the last season of Better Call Saul, correct?
Yeah, we're bummed because he makes me laugh every night. I love him. In fact, Jane makes fun of me with her son. She's like, I guess Saul does something illegal and I shouldn't be liking it. And I'm thinking, I'm so glad, that he did that. Because
she's proud of Saul some of his antisocial behavior. It's terrific.
I have to use a tissue.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're ready. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So how long? So I was reading through your bio on Matchmaker, which is how I found you guys. Well, you guys sent me a message.
Oh.
I know that's how I was with my co-host. So like we were very he was like, what is Matchmaker? Did you sign us up for a group dating website? He'd get all the emails, but so I saw your guys' message and I was like, you guys have such a cool story. So you guys are like a joint therapist, kind of like tag team.
that and be licensed. Hello.
Yeah.
So what we
Too
did
many
was
rules.
we did a lot of therapy, individual and couples and whole families together. And then only one could bill it. It was terrible. So now that we're not in that profession anymore because we're older and we wanted to get out.
And I got in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care. I could say
And I did too, but I was just waiting for the other ball to get me in trouble further. So I wanted to get out before they scathed my rep.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We're more like Saul than
definitely.
than Jack, I guess. Oh no, we're like Jack too.
Yeah. And we love violence in movies,
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I'm in Chicago, and you get a little bit of mix of the other violence too, like the real life shit. So it's definitely better in movies. I'll tell you that.
But it does work better. One person and the two of us, because we were a little bit of a comedy routine as well. And the person got two perspectives, because in our relationship, it's a little, in every relationship, there'll be, a dominant in this or a dominant in that. And I was more male, yet her words meant something to me because she's the older twin. And when I heard them, it was almost like I had to stand and salute her. And we'd go with that. And then I'd get angry and scream a lot of men.
So you guys kind of moved to, I saw on your website, you guys do a lot of podcasts. Have you guys ever thought about like starting your own? You guys are hilarious already, and we're only 5 minutes into this.
Think about it, but something is wrong. We've got to base it on the planetary alignment when we were born or something. We just can't seem to do it like this. Ad lib, like we
what happens is Jane doesn't think I'm funny because I am a comedian most of the time, but she can't be funny 24/7. She literally gets up, throws something off the couch and says, I'm done. This is fucking boring. So we have a hard time doing it ourselves unless there's a third person
that's at least whispering a question or something in our ear.
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely found that too. So that's why we ended up with this kind of format where we interview and talk to people.
Right.
So you guys were in Connecticut, partially in Connecticut currently.
Yep.
You're now in Florida. You guys are loving it, living the life, looking at palm trees all day. But so moving from there to like, what are the biggest differences, do you think? Like, because you guys are still East Coast, but you guys are the Southern Coast.
Oh, I see a nice, well, besides those roads, right? I see a difference in that I am thrilled with my fellow human being.
Neighbor
somehow, that in Florida, a lot of people don't have car insurance and a lot of people don't have health insurance. And in Connecticut, it's a little embarrassing to admit that, but here it's the norm. And I say right on my brother here.
What I was going to say, though, is the difference for me is people are friendlier here. They don't look at you odd if you want to talk. And being twins, in Connecticut, it was, why are you dressed the same? What is your problem? What's the matter? Aren't you an individual? Over here, we almost get the waves from a concert where we live, just because we're here dressed like there's women of all ages and colors. It's a little odd for us. And they're younger than we are. And they'll say, you two are adorable. And they're acting as if we're the little young girls. But Florida loves twins that are dressing alike. We can't go grocery shopping without getting stopped. And really, they love it.
Yeah, all we need is the paparazzi.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, like, if you can find that, like, area in the world that, like, you feel like you fit more than wherever you were originally put on the planet. So are you guys originally from Connecticut?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like born and raised?
Unfortunately.
Of course we are. Yeah.
Well, okay. So do you guys ever like feel like the other one's in your head because you guys are twins? So I'm not a twin. I don't know anything about twins. So I think that's partially why I was so interested in your guys' story.
Well, good, because it's interesting. I was the twin, younger. This is Joan. Where anything that happened to Jane, I literally felt it. So I had aches and pains, or I had morning sickness when she was pregnant. People would ask with deck of cards. They would ask Jane in another room, what card?
I
Oh,
pick a
excuse me,
number.
yeah, she'd pick it.
I pick a card, and 9 out of 10 times I think she got it.
Yeah,
right
and I
first
would get
time.
it right, and it scared me. And then I used to do. It wasn't just Jane. I had a lot of dreams of dead people, and it wasn't fun at all. And Jane, being spiritual, said, "Well, why don't you just tell them to come visit me?" And I did one night, and then it didn't go well for her either. But the twin thing is, I could pretend to be Jane. I did something ignorant or stupid in New Haven once. And they knew who I was, and they said, well, which one are you, Jane or Joan? And I'm Joan. And I went, Jane.
Yeah, the one that's afraid of people throwing her under the bus. She threw me right, and no problem. They threw right
Yeah,
under.
that's what an old before I heard.
Yeah, at that point you're like, well, when it's turned around, it's not as bad. So you guys also did I see that you guys wrote a book together?
Yes, we did.
Ooh, that was
a lot of
tough.
arguments there.
Real tough.
Yeah. Well, what ended up happening with that is we actually got a little bit better because it was a healthy-ish style book, and it's really small, ADHD friendly. And we come out with our own mental illness. You know, as former therapists, it's as a therapist, you can't really come out.
They
with it.
frown
They frown
upon
upon it.
Which should
Hey, at least in
change.
Connecticut.
Yeah, and that should totally change because AA works and they always come out with it. And your primary care doctor is definitely going to say, oh, yeah, I had a heart attack as well. Or I broke my arm, in the 50s or whatever, if old white men are still around from that era.
And then the other thing is it's so hard to get better, especially if there's work involved and the assignment that, you're gung-ho, but nobody gets up to do the work. So we came up with the simplest
Yes.
that even techniques that even a sloth could do, because we were only coming up with stuff that we would do, and we wouldn't do most things. So, and that in there is the beginning of healing.
Yeah, therein lies it.
Yeah, we have our second book because we found out about the arguing. The second book is
The ego has landed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're old enough, that's the eagle has landed when we went to the moon. It was
Yeah.
a big deal. If you don't know that, that's the spinoff. We probably should pick a more youthful title. Oh my
No,
God.
No. But I think it's really cool because it has like the whole psychological id, ego, and
Yeah.
well, what's the other one? Id, ego,
Super ego.
super ego. So like it has that connotation to it. Yeah, I did a lot of research with a couple institutions out here, like kind of self-help, but empowering yourself and doing things like that. And I actually still might be one of the youngest people to have ever gone through that program. I think I was 14 when I went through it, and I was just surrounded by people in like their 40s and 50s that were like trying to be reborn. And I was like, I haven't really done it the first time. So I'm like kind of just learning as we go. And like we would have like group sharing things, and people would be talking about this awful trauma, which I know you guys deal with, or talk about it a lot. And people would be talking about this awful trauma that they went through, and I'd be like, the worst thing is like sometimes my parents get mad at me for not like picking up my room. Like that was like the worst of it at that point. And like it was like all these different things, just like seeing people from like different countries come in and talk about things they dealt with in order to get here. And I was just like, I think I'm fine. I'm good. But they would always get mad at me for being funny.
Oh.
So, because they'd be like, what are you hiding? You're hiding something.
Well, I'll tell you, being the comedian and even as a therapist, at some point, we actually had a secretary. We were doing well. You plan for your retirement is what I want to say to young people. So you're doing well. Don't spend it all. Anyway, because otherwise you'll be in Florida over here with us. Sharing an apartment. Oh my God. I had my own. Anyway, they used to say there's too much laughing coming from your office. And there were clients of mine that we laughed pretty much for 45 minutes, and they'd get up and say thanks, as if they just paid to see a comedian. But as I watch all the comedians, they do have a high suicide risk. And the other thing is Jimmy O. Lang said it, and I thought, wow, he just opened me up. He just tore me up. He said, like every comedian, you're bullied. And you find a way to make that bully laugh. No one ever bullies you again. And I was thinking about it, what we went through when we were little. And, teachers used to get to hit back then. And at that point, not enough because the bullies were, wow, Mr. Lyons body slammed one of them. Thank you very much. So that we didn't get literally burned with a cigarette. And the girl got it worse. Laura, that poor thing. She used to get hit and pinched and stuff. So anyway, there was too much laughing. So what I want to say is you can do both. You can laugh your way to heal because laughter is the best medicine physically, but emotionally, Jane had the funniest story. One of her clients who never laughed came in because there's science now, big deal. Science is all, hypothesis, and we'll eventually prove that. But God, we prove it and then it changes. But tell me about that client. It was hilarious.
Before I tell you about the client, can I just say that the rumor around the junior high school of Mr. Lyons' girlfriend, her was Miss Wolf. So that in itself was like either some kind of weird destiny trick. The whole school, I think, was on candid camera. Anyway, are you talking about
the kid who came in who didn't laugh and then researched it?
Oh, yeah. He researched it. Yeah. And he was trying, because he suffered from trauma, but it presented as, severe depression. And what he did was he said, Jane, I came up with a new coping skill. And I'm like, that's great. What is it? And he said, I am going to laugh. I think it was for 3 minutes, 5 minutes or something every single day because of the benefits of laughter. You know where he is now? On a tropical island living the life. There's something about lucky people. It's their thought process, because I have been so unlucky, and now that I'm flipping to the glass is half full, it's interesting. It takes a really long time, but once it starts, so you feel lucky, and then the second you have a fight with your sister over absolutely nothing, some little things that aren't so cool start happening again. So.
But she didn't tell you how he laughed. Like it was uncomfortable. Like it was fake at first. And in psychiatry, what's fake at first are positive affirmations or viewing it through a different lens. It's actually fake at first. And what's AA's?
AA says fake it till you
make it. But why in psychiatry we forget, we'll poo-poo a positive affirmation because it's a lie. Fake news.
Psychiatry,
it's fake news.
Western medicine poo-poos anything they didn't come up with. Come on.
Right. They came up.
So with I want to get more into like the positive effects of laughter.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because I saw that all over your website was, laughter is like the healing. And I mean, even Robin Williams would say things like that. Again, he was very depressed and had a bunch of things, but he always knew that he didn't want other people to feel that way. So he made them laugh.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Well, one day, we always knew there is a neurotransmitters that is released, and I can't think of which one because music, it's dopamine, I think. But with laughter, neurotransmitters are released, so you're going to be less depressed.
Ones. Dopamine is one. Yes.
Your facial muscles, I believe there's like 15 of them because I'm into anti-aging. Call me shallow if you want. I don't mind wrinkles, but the sagging look.
Yes.
It's like a candle wax or something. Yeah. So I started looking into that. So many facial muscles are moving at one time when you're laughing that you're not only making yourself feel better, you're making yourself look better. You're actually moving back to anti-aging. It boosts your immune system. Excuse me very much. Harvard wrote all about that. I don't know why.
Decreases the stress hormones.
Decreases the stress hormones. There's so many physiological effects to it. We all should be laughing more instead of, unfortunately, cancel culture's canceling it. It's just a bit too much. It's, they're good people do bad things, period. We're all in it together. And, people forget that you can't rise alone. Well, you can a little bit. Good luck with that camel and the needle and the eye and all that. But we rise together and we would be better together. Look at this. You're better as a therapist. You're better as roommates. You're better as, I knew film producers that were twins. And I'm talking too much.
Yep.
So
and laughter breaks the ice, and laughter helps. It kind of disarms people to be able to share, because if you, think of the court jester or the clown, they're mocking themselves so that you can feel more comfortable.
Right.
How about that movie or something where the guy said,
they're in a bar.
Go ahead, Joan.
And one of the guys does something so ignorant. I don't know if he gets slammed down by a bunch of women, but he says to his buddy, God, fucking do something stupid so that I don't, kill myself tonight. Yeah, it was really funny.
Well, and I think, that makes so much sense what you guys just said, because when I was like in any situation, whether it was college or high school, and I would have to give a presentation on anything, I would always start with a joke. So that way I would like kind of break the tension. It wouldn't just be staring at a sea of people that were just staring back at me and like waiting for me to do something. They'd just be like, yeah, okay. And I was like watching everyone, and it's like they're just delivering to a silent crowd. And I was like, and I would get up and like I had a French presentation in high school, and I remember I under my breath said shit, and then I went, pardon my French. And then everyone went and and even the teacher laughed, because normally she would have been like, that's unacceptable. But I was like, pardon my French. And she goes, all right, go on. And I mean, I got like a C on it still. I wasn't good at all at French. So it was one of those things where I was like, but I was more comfortable to even just flat out fail in French after that little joke, because everyone laughed. So I was like, well, no one's expecting much now. So let's go.
Well, don't feel badly about that, because I just read, I didn't read the article, the headline that said the French that they can detect people that it's not their first language, and they really have no time. They'd rather you speak your original language than they can rat you out. So
yeah, people said the French are mean. I was in France, and as long as I kept my mouth shut, everyone was real nice to me. When I think about the plane I got on almost crashed in the Pacific. We had to turn back, and I had to stay overnight in France again after that, and then get on another plane, which was a disaster.
And that started Joan's spiritual path, I believe.
Yeah, some days I'm still atheist, but yeah, on the plane, everybody started saying Our Father together. I thought, this is weird. And then I didn't know any dead people at the time, except an uncle that I didn't know if he'd remember me. And my grandparents, I didn't know, and they only spoke Italian. So I remember saying, okie dokie. He said, God, here we go. The lady actually cut my hand by accident. She held my hand so tight across the aisles. And people were saying we'll all die together. It was awful.
It was an emergency landing.
Terrible.
Joan, they had she had to go down that air
the
thing.
balloon thing.
Oh.
It was a real.
You had to take your shoes off.
Crash-ish.
But when that pilot, oh my God, when he landed that fucking plane, everyone thought he was God. I thought, wow, I did it. I finally met God. He landed our engine. It was a 3-engine plane. One engine caught on fire. They took the gasoline fuel out of the second engine. Yeah. We all saw the gas flying by in the fire. And they said, don't worry, we can fly on one engine. Wow. That was like a roller coaster. I'd never that was horrible. So yeah.
I didn't pay attention to, you hear all these life lessons on your way growing up. And I heard that, and I would do a standing ovation for a pilot, right? And you think of all the pilots in war, but I went out on a date with a guy that was a pilot, and his eagle hadn't landed. I was tilting my head. I'm thinking, who does this gentleman think he is on a first date? But he was a pilot, and you know what? I should have given him a standing ovation. The date would have gone better.
Yeah, pilots and doctors, they do have a big ego.
Yeah. So speaking of doctors, there's a lot of talk about with mental health, people using other things than like Western medicine, things like microdosing mushrooms and things like that. Do you guys look at any of those as viable options to help people with extreme depression or anxiety?
Absolutely. A lot of people, ourselves included, what we forget is when our ancestors went to school and what they did and all the good, because we remember what they didn't do, what they did that didn't work. In the 70s, psychologists were giving their clients ecstasy to help them express themselves. My ex-husband was in a government-funded study on THC in Salt Lake City, Utah in the 70s, early 70s. Looking at the psychological effects of that. LSD, I believe the SSRIs were kind of,
yes.
There's a multi-transmitter reuptake inhibitor. I may have said that wrong, but a multi transmitter affecting medication that unfortunately doesn't really work that well in psychiatry for anxiety, non-controlled substance. But they definitely looked at all of that.
And it was on the right track. But mushrooms. None of this
Kudos.
is working because you got to follow the dollar. Something you have to take every day today. The mushroom, you can take, I know people, they have them and they use them as medicine 4 or 5 times a month, or somebody said they went 2 or 3 months. It works. Marijuana, it works. If you're a social smoker, though, from what I've seen is when you were younger, you actually poo-poo marijuana as a medicine today, which I think is a big mistake because it's amazing for your whole body.
So it was cool to watch my mom's opinion change from when I was living there, or at least before I was like 20. And then after I had moved to Chicago, and I'm like, it's legal here, and I was like, here, this is like legal weed. This is what it is. And have her use it. And now she's like, can you give me a little bit more? Like, so it's definitely cool to like see that. And like people where she was like, no, don't, it's illegal. You can't use it. It's legal. And I was like, there's a lot of things that are illegal that are,
Right.
Fun. Like, but there's not, so definitely, to decompress, do stuff like that. I mean, for someone who also doesn't, want to drink, have a couple drinks after work, do that sort of thing. So things with, Western medicine, you have the mushrooms, which, I mean, I've done them a few times. I enjoy them, once every like 6 months or something like that. Just like a mental reset to like, but I mean, I've definitely gone above and beyond what like a microdose would be. I remember one time I was sitting there with my friend and he was like, man, I can't believe people were just like looking at this art. And he's like, I can't believe people microdose this shit. And I was like, yeah, well, we overdosed this shit. So that explains why you can't believe that right now.
We haven't done that yet. And I say yet because unfortunately, we came from the era of Nancy Reagan saying, just say no. And
this is your brain. This is your brain on pot. It was a Friday getting the egg.
Or just on drugs, and they do that.
Oh, yeah, drugs.
And then if you were a social marijuana user, you literally are the reason. I think his name was Nicky. It was an Italian last name. And I thought, oh, my God, I helped kill that guy. And I watched the movie. I think he was buried alive after he was beaten. And I'm like, oh, my God, I should never do that. And then we became nurses. And because it was illegal, oh, my God, I didn't smoke after that in the 80s. And cocaine, though, was, hard to detect. I don't think people were detecting that at the time. Cocaine, for me, was the best ADD medicine I had ever snorted, ever. Like, that was calming. I did very well in school. And I wasn't chatty on cocaine. Cocaine was my medicine, but
Well, and I'm diagnosed as ADHD, whereas I think my girlfriend is ADD because she's not hyper. I'm the one that's like, oh, talk, like talk about this, and she's like, I have not finished my fucking coffee. Like, you need to just chill, and I'll be like, all right, sorry. But when like I'm on cocaine, like I know I've seen people do cocaine and be up for hours, and the kind of person who I can like do a line and I can go to bed. I'm like, all right, well, time for bed, get all cozy. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I was prescribed Adderall since I was 8.
right.
So it's like this whole, which I actually think I like cocaine more than I like Adderall because Adderall makes me more tense. It's all that stuff.
Ritalin and Dexedrine. And I only did cocaine a few times because it made me calm, attentive, and focused, but it did interrupt my sleep. But it was a much better treatment. I agree. And we're talking the cocaine from that. Was it a Johnny Depp movie? Yeah, whatever that Big Shot did. Because the cocaine today is cut a lot. And, God, fentanyl and everything. But yeah, I preferred cocaine. And cocaine was in the Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Hospitals.
And in the hospitals.
When Jane was working medicine, it was right there, uncounted, right?
No, that was morphine. No, everything's counted.
Oh, that was morphine.
Yeah, no big deal. It's just one of the most addictive opiates.
There was a lot of of trust. There was a lot more trust. People weren't looking at nurses as addicts. And nowadays, if one thing is missing, everybody's an addict and all that stuff.
And it's too bad that the few people that needed help and stole it or took it, it's really hard. By the time the patient gets their medicine, it's so locked up and individually wrapped in a little, oh my God, by the time they get it, maybe I hope they're still alive.
Well, and I'll say this. So I'm prescribed 30 milligrams of Adderall, which I'm supposed to take every single day. But if I take that, my jaw's clenched and I feel like a robot. I don't eat, I don't do anything. Where if I do like cocaine, like not the same thing. Like I have to do a lot to be clenching my jaw or doing anything like that. So I would take like a quarter of a 30 milligram Adderall. And my doctor was like, does that work? I'm like, that is an enjoyable. I still feel like myself. I don't feel shut down. I feel it's like a world of difference.
Yep.
Now there's a bunch of other things out there for like like that you can just order on Amazon or wherever, like the Alpha Brain that I know Joe Rogan talks about a lot and things like that. Have you guys looked into that at all? Or
Tell you, when I was in school, Jane was a nurse first. She was extremely intelligent. She retained information. I was so sad. So I went and took something called choline, and the side effect was you could possibly smell like fish. So I had made sure those two girlfriends I had, one who had the dealer boyfriend, I was so lucky, uncut. And that's why we enjoyed it, because it wasn't cut with everything. Anyway, I took choline, and it took a while, like I take it for a whole month at least, but continue to take it. I not only had the correct answers, I saw the page it was on in my mind. So and that's the precursor to acetylcholine, which goes away during Alzheimer's, which, by the way, THC blocks the amyloid plaque from building up. I mean, are you kidding? And they took it away from us for how many years? And our father died of it. But I think Jane took something different in college.
I did. It wasn't until I was getting my master's degree and I knew I needed to take something. And I didn't even consider the stimulants. I'm not even sure why. But I read that ginkgo biloba, and I was kind of into more natural things. Ginkgo is a tree, and you had to take it for 3 months consistently before you wanted to notice something.
That's why I didn't.
And I mean, I was very organized. I had outlines. I mean, I did so well. I could read articles.
Yeah. The reading, we could read.
You could retain I've always been able to read, but to retain content, I would read. I remember being in 4th grade and I read the whole page of whatever book we were supposed to read. And I thought, I know I'm considered smart here, but I haven't a clue of what I just read. And I graduated high school and I've never read a book. None of those things that are now banned in some places. You're supposed to read Catcher in the Rye or Mice and Men. I never read any of them.
I couldn't. Young girls liked Gregory Peck. Oh, he looked like he was a molester to me when I was little.
Never read a book. But we were never identified as ADHD. You didn't even go after the little boy Johnny running around in the back of the class.
Peeing.
Nobody really, at least where we grew up, nobody did ADD. They didn't even identify.
Plus, I believe that ADD is probably a trauma symptom, although you think you had a wonderful upbringing.
No, I do. But I also am aware that there were probably so many issues. But at the same time, like with, so I was prescribed Adderall at the age of 8, which, different forms of it. So yep. I think the biggest thing is being reliant on that every day. Like they want me to take this so that I can be how they want me to be. Right. And that was the biggest thing. It took me a while to now I take it when I want to get a bunch of shit done. I don't take it I don't take it every day. I mean, it's a stimulant. It's literally a derivative of meth. It doesn't, I can take it and I don't need a month for it to start working. It's not like an antidepressant or anything like that. It takes 30 minutes to kick in. It's perfect. So but I used to have to take it every day to be this is how they want me. And I would freak out if I didn't take it before school. And I would be I'm not getting anything done today. But they were he's talkative in class. He's all this stuff. I was also 8 though,
right.
To some extent, there might have been some other different thing that wasn't gonna. And the come down from it when you're, taking it from 8 is like the withdrawal factor. When I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. So I just like it took me probably like 2 weeks to like stop feeling like depressed, anxious, and need it.
I got very depressed not so much. Well, Ritalin made me angry, and I had a
Me too.
slight twitch. And Adderall, I mean, I would be out with friends, and my girlfriend would say, "Jane, what's wrong with you?" And I'd be zoning out like I had drank maybe 6 drinks. It was a weird come down. I didn't like it at all. Actually.
Yeah, like that 8th hour is just like you're like it's
You're-
quiet. And my girlfriend had a friend come in, and it was on a Friday, and I had taken it because I was getting my HubSpot certification for other, jobs that I do. And it was uh she was like, "What is wrong with you? Like, do you really hate her that much?" And I go, "I don't hate her at all. I really like her. I think she's great." And she goes, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "I can't snap out of it. It's just the come down of this."
Oh,
Like, I was like, "I'm really trying my best right now to be like the fun person, but like I like can't."
right.
So it was very hard for and then once she realized that, I was like, and like she'll always be like, every time she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's just like I took it today, so I have to wait for it to get out of my system." And then that next morning is even rougher.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's so many people that I feel like turn to it immediately. Whereas honestly, I got more done when I would take like a little pinch of mushrooms in the morning or something like that. Or even like the like mud water. Have you guys heard about that?
I have, but we haven't.
Yeah, she has.
We
of
we haven't
course.
put our hands in our pocket yet. It's like a mushroom
Oh,
coffee.
well,
Yeah, it's like mushroom coffee, so derivatives.
the documentary, did you see it? Fantastic Mushrooms?
No, I haven't.
No, Fantastic
Fungi, I
Fungi,
think.
maybe.
Oh, okay. Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, it's a wonderful.
It has a psychiatrist went to tears when he knew that mushrooms helped with people, and then they knew it worked, but it wouldn't allow you for the money because it's natural and the stuff. And yeah, he cried and said they took it away for all those years, and that's what they did because LSD. Down syndrome was very popular when we were younger. Where'd that go?
It wasn't popular. You saw it.
You saw it more prevalent, and LSD worked very well with Downs and mentally challenged, however you want to say it these days. I have a cousin of ours our age, and when we were younger, she was retarded, and that's
that was the terminology.
And the terminology in psychiatry, like say somebody wanted to go for disability, and you have to describe the way they walk. Well, the normal word in psychiatry is psychomotor retardation. It's not psychomotor challenged. When everything starts to change, it's like, wow, give me a break. People can't even get my name right because I'm the second twin. They say Joanne.
Well, Joan's not a very popular name right now. And what we've found in the past few years is a lot of younger people. And I think it's because when my son was in school, they wanted kids to start reading and don't pay attention to the way things are spelled. Just see how it's stated, how it's pronounced in your head. So Jone would be Joan, but Joan. There's a lot of people that are like Joan.
So at the DMV, at IKEA, on the phone, no one says Joan ever now.
Yeah. Plus, it's not a popular.
If I were offended, I could be a bitch, but I don't know why people get so offended.
Yeah.
The person's not purposely calling me the wrong name because now I say, "Oh, I pronounce it Joan," and then they apologize. So I had to stop saying that because I was being a bitch, I guess. So anyway. Trauma really manifests in all different ways. And people think, we were on a podcast the other day and I went, oh, people are going to think Vietnam veterans and rape victims are traumas. Neglect, being made fun of, humiliated. Hitler was humiliated every day and beaten. People who love corporal punishment more than a spanking because, spanking on a diaper, it's okay. It's a quick fix, discipline is teaching, okay, but that's a lot. Don't give anyone a living wage, and they're not in the home anymore. So who's teaching their children?
Not in Connecticut.
Who's teaching the children? A stranger.
Discipline is incarceration in Connecticut.
Yeah, they're on the phone. They're on the phone. Yeah, the kids here. But anyway, neglect, latchkey kids. A lot of that is trauma. And if you viewed it as trauma and your body reacted to it as trauma, then you're going to get the symptoms, unfortunately, because it's physical. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good. That was awesome. So bringing it back to trauma, and the different forms of trauma that aren't necessarily seen as trauma by the public. I think there's a lot of things now that are seen as trauma more. Like it's more openly, where like in, like the 40s, 50s, 60s, it was like trauma. What's trauma? Like, did you go to war? You don't have trauma. And it's like, other than that, like now you have, rape, war, little things like school, like bullying, eating disorders, those things. Eating disorders are probably result of trauma, but and things like that. So what are the ones that you don't hear of, but are, kind of fly under the radar?
Okay. I really believe this, especially with the substance abuse population. Something you need to forget. So something you saw that was so upsetting
or
to
something
you.
that was done to you.
Yeah, but I want to say that for the people who don't think they have it, you might have seen something. And that thing you might have seen, because people unfortunately kept telling me, and I'm thinking, no, you think of that. You don't have to lay all that shit on me. I don't want to go home going, are you kidding? He saw that, then I have it. Well, one of them is a cat. And you know what? A lot of cruelty to animals. You're not supposed to do that ever, and especially not in front of a child. Like, what are you thinking? And I want to say this, a man back when we were younger in the 60s said on television, why should I be arrested for raping my daughters? After all, it's not that it affects them. I'm sorry. In my office, people who were molested are in the offices. They're in the office because somebody raped them once at age 5. And they don't ever tell anybody. They've never told anybody this. And, unfortunately, the body remembers, and you're going to come out looking like a fucknut, like myself included, screaming at people for no reason. And I want to say the opposite is Jane. And she doesn't ever scream, so she always looks well-adjusted.
No, every once in a while. I'm really calm until I'm not, and it just so happens that I don't, nothing. I think my idol is like a Buddhist monk. And so I'm trying to not be bothered by it. I'm working on letting things be, like the reality that shows itself to me. And I'm trying to be positive, because I was super, super negative. Glass was empty all the time. I found flaws in everything. Everything.
She did.
I did. But the funniest part was with twins. I'm the fat one. I'm the calm one, right? She's the funny one.
She was fat, calm, and smart. And they said, oh, yeah, Joan, you make us laugh. Thanks.
But those qualities were not in vogue when we were growing up.
Definitely in the 70s, they wanted a dumb blonde.
Yeah.
That
shorter. We were tall. We were, when we made that, I think we were at the end of the line all the time with the one tall boy, that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't think I had PTSD is the point. How could I have PTSD? Because Joan had it. She had the violent crimes against her. But the funny part in my head was, I didn't admit this to people, is I had flashbacks. And I used to think, I have flashbacks, but even I wouldn't label myself as PTSD until she said she was going to go for medical marijuana. And then I thought, my God, she's going to sleep, because I believe
it
that
doesn't help me sleep.
Chronic insomnia.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
It's some kind, there's patients that have been, their first all-nighter was age 5 and they actually aren't bipolar. It's really weird. And chronic insomnia seems to be some type of trauma, and you just will not go to sleep.
Yeah.
Whatever. So anyway, I didn't think I could be it. And
so I don't mean neglectful parents either. You're feeling this way. So I wish people would realize that there's so many different forms. So when you're being labeled with a psychiatric illness, when we were working in the early 80s, we were privileged to see doctors exploring trauma to the extent that is not explored today. I mean, it just isn't. And it was so intense back then that we just read that in the 1950s, the DSM, which is the Psychiatric Bible of Diagnosing with Symptoms, the diagnosis said, including schizophrenia, human reaction to trauma
or stress. Trauma.
Yeah. And then these doctors that we thought were like God, I thought they were like gods.
Yeah, when
the way they spoke and the way I mean, what? It was amazing. And all they did was explore trauma. And that was interesting. So now I get it, because in the 60s, they took that out of the DSM. And we all fell for, I'm messed up, I'm abnormal, what is wrong with me? And we feel so much more isolated. And that wasn't very nice to do.
You know, and it was all biological, and, you know, certain diagnoses are going to run in families. But the funny part is that everything runs in families, because there's there's a sperm and an egg from two different people with DNA in both, and they combine and make a human.
Yeah.
And there you just passed on everything, Jack.
See,
right?
You passed on anxiety. You passed on depression.
I passed on depression to my poor son. Oh my goodness. Oh,
you pass along anger. It's incredible. And everyone will be like, please, it's a chemical imbalance.
You know,
good luck.
You pass on whether you have an extreme like or dislike to cilantro.
Oh, right.
And we had one of those 23andMe or one of those things done, and I went back to read it, and it says you are highly likely to have an aversion to cilantro.
How funny is that?
And we do.
And we do.
So I actually noticed that it's not in me. I don't know. I'm perfect. But,
hey, so is our sister Lori.
Isn't that funny? Because you can be like, I noticed this in this person, this person, this person, this person. You're like, but me? No, I don't have it. When it's with my girlfriend and her father, so she's Greek, and we were eating at an Indian restaurant 2 weeks ago, and she goes, "There's nutmeg in this. I can't eat nutmeg." Oh. And then we were with her father, and her father was like, "Oh, no, I don't like nutmeg, so I don't want to bite of that." And I was like, "Okay," so I see that. And then they also like weird about onions. And I was like, but then he's weird about onion. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like literally everything that he's like, no. And it's the exact same problem that she has with it. So, where I'm like, I'll take a bite of it. I don't mind nutmeg, you know, but yeah, no, it's just like those like things. So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that it's like passing it down, like almost like the trauma thing.
Works the opposite, where, for example, our mother had bad kidneys when she was pregnant. So it was highly likely that I was the stronger twin, that I would send healthy kidney DNA over to my mom because of this thing. Like it's almost like we're all programmed to keep the race going, and every species is going to do this protective thing. So the best part,
isn't that weird?
What was so much fun. I did not like my pregnancy at all. Okay. I was one of the unhappiest pregnant people I was spoken to at work. I was 9 months pregnant, and my girlfriend at work had to pull me aside and say, Jane, you've got to stop moaning and sighing. Cause plus I was huge and I was uncomfortable, and he was born in the summer. So anyway, but what I want to say is, I was less than 6 months pregnant, and I was able to read a book for fun with no ADD symptoms whatsoever. It was amazing. And of course, after I gave birth, that changed. But I am so interested in that exchange of DNA, the passing on of DNA. It's beautiful. Yeah.
So when it comes to trauma, what role do you guys think that like organized religion plays? Do you guys think that plays anything into it, like being raised in a religious household versus a non-religious household?
It really does.
Extremes of anything seem to be adverse, because we've had extremely religious where that didn't go well, and the person has a psychotic disorder, all the way to a very extreme, the 60s flower child, as they say. Actually, that ended up in psychosis too, in my experience. Extreme discipline, extreme anything.
Because what happened was, say that the people eventually get a diagnosis of PTSD, because of course at first you start with the least one that an insurance company would then be prejudiced against you later. It's horrible. When we got in trouble, do you know what a DEA or a state-controlled substance agent said? Please don't tell me that you ever prescribed according to an insurance company. Lady, what life are you even
She's not on
living
this
in?
planet, I guess.
It is totally dictated by the insurance company because otherwise the patient's paying cash.
At least
And
in
there
Connecticut.
aren't many people that can afford lots, whatever. Anyway, I couldn't believe she said that. But the word, I was blown away. Like I understood all the traumatic things that were physical and some of the emotional, horrific head games. This was the one I was surprised at. And then I had to think, gee, did our parents ever say this? The word that was so upsetting was, I'm disappointed in you. Because the person they constantly wanted that approval eventually. And I think the parent forgot to say, I'm so proud of you, maybe. It's pathetic how we as human beings, and I guess we're animals, but we're so much less than in the jungle because we have this thing where we need emotional approval. And to get better from PTSD, unfortunately, is we actually need to be validated.
You need a bit of a
Need it.
community, and without, we have a breakdown.
It's embarrassing.
Speaking of
almost.
extreme, though, extreme poverty.
Yes.
The worst thing, the scenario
There
I
you
have
go.
ever heard in my entire career.
Mhm.
The extreme poverty that a family went through. And, unless you are in the situation, you don't know what you would do. Because I'd like to sit here on my high white horse and say, I would never do that. Extreme poverty. The little girl was 8 years old when she was being sold for sex in this community, to the point where she got pregnant. And at 8, you don't know this, and the parents, I guess, thought she was just gaining weight
Because you don't get your menses yet at that age.
Right.
So another
So-
nurse from a third world country had to tell us why.
Oh yeah, the more
I didn't know this.
the more a penis enters a vagina, and
because of evolution and the wanting to keep
and
the race going.
ejaculates, that body's going to start cooperating faster than if she wasn't being raped.
Yeah, isn't that
Because
awful?
of what we were talking about, the survival of these races and the animal kingdom. So that's how I got an education on an extreme poverty. And in our country, Joan has statistics.
We're
on
very
it.
comfortable with. I think it's 25% of children starving. We throughout the. One of my exes has 3 degrees from Yale, and he throws the statistics at us every morning during coffee.
Mhm.
Virtually though, not really. We can't live together anymore. My goodness,
It's like living. It's so much fun.
It is.
You hang up on him when you don't want him around, and
He's
then you
wonderful.
call him up when you need to know something.
brain. He just retains
It's wonderful.
everything. Anything shit is interesting, so he
Wonderful.
retains it all. Yeah. Anyway, we're very comfortable with that. We won't give human beings. We will not give the systemic laws. We won't give them up. Because what are we all afraid? We'll get less? Oh my God. So there's people living. A lot of my clients didn't have a checkbook. They didn't have a savings. They couldn't even buy our book. We gave away thousands of our book. We bought them at a discounted price ourselves and said to people, here, get better. Just read the book, because people were coming back laughing so hard. One girl texted me and said, fuck you. I'm not going to kill myself tonight. And it was just because she laughed so hard. And a therapist coming out with their mental illness made her feel like she wasn't a loser.
It gave people
That's
hope.
horrible. It gave people
We
hope.
didn't even realize it, and it was very
I know.
big in like the substance abuse community,
Yeah.
where they would open it. It's like a 40-page book, so they would open it in anywhere every morning and kind of read what it was, and they said that it was what they needed to hear that morning.
So our trauma, totally opposite. My trauma ended up being similar, and I found this out through my work. My trauma was similar to male incarcerated individuals for more than 3 years. Under 3 years, they acted more like Jane. And Jane's was more like solitary confinement. So, because that's how we were thrusted into life, the
It's in
incubators.
separate incubators.
Never
I was
met-
supposed to go home early, and
Never met our mother.
that
They wonder why we don't want to cuddle. Get away from me. I was in a glass 4x4, hello, with a light.
And this is before nurses in the 70s demanded that parents are able to touch their babies. So this is in the 60s, and incubators, the only people that touched us were the people that had to either take our blood pressure, give us a needle,
Rectal
wash us, feed
thermometer,
us, etc.
rectal glass thermometer.
Oh yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Okay.
At least 3 times a day, at
Yeah.
least, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that the rectal thermometer is pretty much before my time. The only time that they would use it was I mean, I guess maybe I think they had to use it like once or twice when I was really little. But other than that, I've never been around it. And my mom was always like, don't use that one.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, why? She's like, you're gonna need to brush your teeth if you use it. But so thank you guys so much for coming on. And give a quick shout out like where they can find everything. I know it's the therapytwins.com, right? Or
Lose the like that Facebook guy.
oh,
Lose the
okay. Therapytwins.com.
At Therapy Twins, they find all our handles. But the thing about the book is it's free. It's going to stay free.
It's a Kindle.
It's a Kindle ebook. The paper book, we don't know how to upload it yet, but her son is helping us. It'll be up shortly. It's free, and it's Amazon.uk because we had more podcasts in the United Kingdom, so we chose that for country, not country.
They were getting more downloads, etc. But so it's called Under the Hood.
Oh, I forgot to say the title. Under the Hood: How We wired our brains, calmed the fuck down, and let that shit go.
I think that's an awesome title, by the way. When I saw that on your matchmaker profile, I was like, that is a killer profile or a killer title for a book. So therapytwins.com, you can book them on a podcast. You can reach out. You can get their book. You guys have a word search I saw that's featured on it also.
That book too.
We're co-authors. We get one chapter. It's these ladies and they had several
yoga for the brain, and our chapter was if you don't like what your mind is saying, ask your heart, and it actually helps.
So if you guys want to find them, therapytwins.com and at therapytwins on all handles or on social media. Thank you guys so much, Joan, Jane. It's been a pleasure. You guys cracked me out the entire time, and you guys gave me a lot more insight, and like you said, 2 different points of view. Different angles at least.
Likewise, Jack. Thank you.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you guys, and we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know when the episode's released.
Yes.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you.